A common cooking myth that I think we should dispel is this idea that if you're a really good cook, you don't measure your seasonings. Like when you're seasoning chicken or fish or meat, whatever it may be, you don't measure it. You just season until you feel like it's good. I know there's like this joke that goes around, like Black people, we don't season, we don't measure our seasonings. We just season until the ancestors say stop. And that's true. We don't. But I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, because what I've learned is that there are seasonings where you don't have to measure. Like when I'm using garlic powder, onion powder, even chili powder or smoked paprika to season my meats, I'm not measuring that. I'm just getting a feel for this is how I think it should look. But one thing that I will always break out the teaspoon or tablespoon measuring utensil for is salt. Because one of the things that makes or breaks a dish is the amount of salt that's in it. Either it's undersalted or it's oversalted. And so a good rule of thumb is actually that you're supposed to use 1 teaspoon of salt for every pound of meat. And if you're using a seasoning blend like adobo or Maggi or Lori's, you actually have to do a tablespoon per pound of meat because it's diluted salt. It's not just straight salt. But those are things like when I'm seasoning chicken, I will season the garlic powder, I'll add the garlic powder, the onion powder, I'll add all those other things. But one thing I'm gonna make sure that I measure is the salt. I'm gonna look at the package and see how many pounds it is. And if it's 5 pounds, I'm using 5 teaspoons of salt and I'm measuring that. And I think that a lot of people would have much more consistent and properly seasoned food if we weren't afraid to measure, or if we thought that, measuring was a good thing and not a sign that you don't know how to cook. So if someone's in the kitchen and you see them breaking out the measuring tools, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't know how to cook. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're experienced. Sometimes they just want to have food that's consistent. For example, like for my mac and cheese recipe, I use measuring utensils to season it. Because I've written out the recipe, I've tested, I've tried, and I've determined, okay, this is the exact amount of this I need, this is the exact amount of that I need. And even though it's my recipe that I've written down, every time I make it, I will go back and look at that recipe that I've written down because I want my mac and cheese to be consistent. And I think that's a problem that I think a lot of cuisines in the African diaspora, I think we have a problem with that because we don't measure as Black people, Jamaican, Nigerian, African American, whatever it may be, we don't really measure. That's not our tradition. We just, again, we season till the ancestors say stop, and that can be good, but it can also mean that the food's not consistent. Because I'm sure many of you have gone to a restaurant where one day it's really good and then you go back the next week and it's like different cooks were in the kitchen. And sometimes that means that they're not following a standard recipe, they're just seasoning as they go. So I would say that to be a good or great cook, you do have to have an intuitive sense of when enough seasoning is enough, but food is way too expensive to be playing around with it. So do not be afraid to measure your salt content specifically. I think that's a sign of a really good cook who's concerned about making sure that the food is properly seasoned and they don't waste it. So next time you're trying to